fallacies sometimes scorch entire populations and professions, often with the most devastating results, making what seemed like a good idea turn into a tragedy very frequently. Now, of course, this also happens in the realm of fitness. Now, fallacies are not always deliberate, but a prudent athlete or coach should always be able to identify and unmask fallacies in arguments. In today's technological age, we are bombarded with information from many different sources, many different social medias, many different people whispering in our ears, on top of the ridiculous documentaries which are being made. And, of course, navigating these treacherous waters, especially when it comes to information found on social media, can be very difficult, kind of to dig through the bullshit, if you will. So, when you come across a post presenting an argument or claim, you should be able to decide what is being presented is legitimate or not. You'll be able to analyze the quality of information and arguments being given by these so-called experts through a critical, skeptical, and rational lens, paying close attention to credibility, relevance, the logical strength of the arguments, the balance of the evidence, and the author's level of bias. Now, just to be clear, it's not a crime to try to persuade someone towards an opinion. It's what I'm doing literally right now. I'm on a mission to persuade you to battle the bullshit and guide yourself and your friends and family towards true principles and strength and conditioning, and to save you time. There's a lot of content out there, but most of it is just bullshit that needs battling. Now, often these idiots may not have any credible evidence, or may only be relying on partial evidence, or will use other devices of argumentation to sway your thinking, to promote, to sell a product, to market some new ridiculous gym gadget that you have no use for. Now, you need to be aware of these. These are known as logical fallacies. And as the name implies, logical fallacies come down to one thing: bad logic. And by learning about these fallacies, which I'm digging into in just 2 seconds, you will be more likely to recognize them in their use, avoid using them yourself, and be better prepared to battle the bullshit arguments presented against you on social media and in your life. So, what is this logical fallacy? Well, fallacies were explained thousands of years ago by a guy named Aristotle. You guys know him. He described these fallacies as tricks of the mind. They are deceptive arguments that make you believe one thing is true or happening when it actually isn't. Now, as coaches, rehab professionals, or athletes, we are particularly vulnerable to fallacies as we look for any evidence that supports our own beliefs. So this is myself included, of course. Therefore, it's very important that we, myself included, have a firm grasp and understanding of logical fallacies as well as our own cognitive biases, so that we can educate ourselves and our clients to the best of our abilities. Now, here is a list of the most common logical fallacies which are found in the arguments against biomechanics and basically pro-tradition and ego lifting, as some of the names imply. They're basically appeal to tradition, ad hominem, straw man, bandwagon, and appeal to authority. Now, I'm sure you will certainly recognize many of them, as I'm sure many of you have heard them at least once before and not been able to accurately refute it, even though you recognized what was going on. But in case you didn't know, mainstream was not always mainstream, and nothing would ever advance without change. Now, unfortunately, people have always ridiculed individuals who were able to see the truth of the matter and not simply follow the crowd. These individuals who go against the crowd are the movers and the shakers of the world. They are the creators. And although, unfortunately, almost unanimously throughout history, great minds have been persecuted or shunned and almost never vindicated during their actual lifetime. Some of these simple examples would be those that we all know and respect in the scientific community, such as Eratosthenes. Over 2,000 years ago, he was the first person known to calculate the circumference of the Earth, which he did by using the extensive survey results he could access in his role at the Library of Alexandria, as well as basic math and a stick in a hole in the ground. Now, even with these tools, his calculation was remarkably accurate. He was also the first to calculate Earth axial tilt, which proved to be remarkably accurate. He created the first global projection of the world, incorporating parallels and meridians based on the available geographic knowledge of his era. And yet still, 2,000 years later, there are many flat earthers who simply disbelieve the evidence of their own eyes, basic observational skills, basic math, and even basic logic. How about Galileo? Now, back in Galileo's day, the predominant view in astronomy was a model first espoused by Aristotle, in which the sun and planets revolved around the earth. Now, this is a system that had been reigning in science for over 1,400 years at this point. Then came Galileo. In 1610, Galileo used his telescope to make some surprising discoveries that disputed this long-held view, coming up with the theory that we all know and understand to be true. This is the fact that Earth and other planets revolve around the sun due to gravity. However, he was ridiculed his entire life for this belief, including being put on trial, and it took over 300 years for his theory to become mainstream. How about Charles Darwin? You've heard of him. Now, when his work was first made public in 1859, it shocked Britain's religious establishment and the world. He was ridiculed and persecuted for his entire life, and while today it is accepted by virtually all scientists, evolutionary theory still is rejected by many Americans, often because it conflicts with their religious beliefs about divine creation. But now, thankfully, in a recent polling, it is estimated that 82% of Americans believe that humans have evolved through evolution with no aid whatsoever from God. However, that still says that a large portion of the world, including, unfortunately, 18% of Americans, believe that the theory of evolution is not true, despite the ungodly, pun intended, amounts of evidence. How about Ludwig Boltzmann? He developed equations and formulas which explain the properties of atoms and how they determine physical nature of matter. Now, it transpires that proposing a theory that disproves other laws of physics and scientists thought to be correct at the time does not make you particularly popular or appreciated. After years and years of fighting for atom theory to be accepted, Boltzmann unfortunately committed suicide. Now, this was only 3 years before Ernest Rutherford discovered the nucleus of an atom, proving Boltzmann's theory to be true. Now, these logical fallacies are the fallacy of appeal to tradition. Essentially, in this case, what the men had to work against was the argument that something is true or valuable simply on the grounds that it has always been believed to be so. A simple real-life example in fitness would be the dogmatic insistence that you must do heavy squats to build big legs, because everyone has done them who has ever had big legs. However, this is of course a ridiculous statement, and of course in no way, shape, or form constitutes an argument against the very basic laws of physics, such as lever magnification, mechanical advantage and disadvantage, neurological implications such as reciprocal inhibition, many other things, or the fact that there is a large variety of exercises which will all produce similar or even better outcomes in leg development. Appealing to tradition in respect to exercise is a particularly silly argument, especially considering that we have only actually been studying exercise science for roughly 70 years. As previously mentioned, we have known the Earth was round for well over 2,000 years, and yet there are still these freaking moronic flat earthers. Science takes time to advance, as well as to distribute the information to the masses of people. In this case, your ignorance does not make you correct, just dogmatic and closed-minded. Of course, the easiest way to point out the flaw in this thinking is to explain that tradition does not necessarily make something good, considering how much progress we have made the past 200 years, shattering traditions left and right. Just a few examples. It was traditionally believed that the woman's place was in the home and the kitchen. It was traditionally believed homosexuality was sinful and against nature. People have traditionally smoked in bars, on airplanes, and also while pregnant. People have traditionally believed the earth was the center of the universe. Most people still hold the belief that they are the center of the universe. People traditionally believe in witchcraft, not the science of germs. I think I have made my point.